Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. Today, I want to introduce you to my guest, Courtney Perron. Courtney is the director of the Southern New Hampshire University Center for New Americans. She is passionate about creating accessible educational opportunities for all people, especially the newest neighbors in Manchester, New Hampshire. She is a social worker and has a master's degree in teaching English as a foreign language. Today's discussion will focus on how Courtney and I met when she was a young teenager, how she has continually worked to develop her leadership skills from a high school peer leader to the director of the Center for New Americans. As a young teen, she started as a mentee and then became a mentor, using that as the springboard for her career in social work. Now, she is managing her staff who supports the growth and development of the youth new to Manchester. So without further ado, let's jump right into our conversation. You're listening to Today's Leaders, from Teens to Titans. Hi, I'm Lorraine Connell, a teen leadership coach. I transitioned from teaching chemistry to coaching teens in leadership, helping them realize they can do hard things. We've often believed that leadership is an innate trait, but it's actually a skill that you build and improve. On this show, you'll meet today's leaders who share their teenage experiences, revealing how they developed confidence, direction, and the tools to become the leaders they are now. You'll discover how you or the teens in your life have the potential to become confident leaders, even if it doesn't seem possible. Welcome, Courtney. It is such a pleasure to have you today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Of course. So I would love for you to take a minute and go back to your teenage experiences. Think about being that 14-year-old in freshman year of high school and talk about how those experiences through your high school journey shaped you into the leader you are today.
Who doesn't want to go back to their teenage years? I say that sarcastically, but I loved high school. I'm one of those rare people who really, I think I found myself and my people and my calling in high school. I loved every moment of it. And so it is my pleasure to go back to high school for a little bit. I started as a mentee, as you mentioned, right? It was something that I didn't choose. It happened to me. I became a mentee. This was just part of the program, as part of the peer leadership program. And something miraculous came out of that, something that I was not expecting, which was my freshman year made friends with upperclassmen who really became my guides and my best friends, and who introduced me to something I became really passionate about, which was like the theater arts. And so they were so supportive and saw my potential and were like, but you should really audition, you should try out. And I built really strong friendships just through that mentor-mentee relationship, and gave me the confidence to try out for different plays, and it became a big part of my personality and my world. And so that positive engagement and the impact that it had on me as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old gave me the confidence then to want to be a mentor and want to do that for younger folks in high school. And so I did. I became a peer mentor myself. I'd like to think I had the same type of impact. I'm not sure I created lifelong friendships out of that experience, but it did show me that I had something to give, into something to give back. And I rolled that into a number of other opportunities, right? So when I had the chance to go out into the community and volunteer, or to lend my time to SAT prep classes for other kids, I knew that I actually had something worthwhile to give, and that it could actually make a difference. And so I think it was the practice of that and the building the confidence behind that eventually led me to doing SAT prep, like I said, and after school homework help with New American students in Concord. I saw something on like the early days of Facebook on social media that they were looking for volunteers, and I started working with my peers and kids younger than me in Concord who had come here through the refugee resettlement program. And it completely opened my eyes and changed my world. And, at the time I was also really involved with the church that I was a part of. And we were doing some mission work, and Now that's not a part of my life anymore. That also really shaped me in those international experiences. And, the purpose behind those trips and those experiences were also to empower people. And so it just kind of started this trend in my life where I knew that I had something worthwhile to give. I knew the power of the building that type of relationship with somebody could have on them because I experienced it myself. And I think when I started looking towards college, I was like, how do I make this into a career? Can you professionalize the passion for helping others into something that's going to pay you? And that's where I started to find social work.
I love that journey that you just took us on. I think you are right that not everybody finds themselves in high school, and even less know themselves enough to know what they want to do and where their path is going to be. I'm curious about the relationships that you had with upperclassmen, because I wonder how that fostered your sense of confidence, your self-worth, all of that I think so many of our young freshmen, teenagers are lacking, that confidence, that self-worth, that ability to stand in themselves and not follow the peer.
Yeah. And so much of the early days of those relationships was just being guided by somebody who's done it before, right? You didn't have to have anything, they didn't have anything super special or super unique or these insane skills to be able to work with me or to support me. They just had been a teenager before. They had gone through these things before and they could say, you know what, I lived it, I survived it, you're going to be fine. Or stand in this line, not that line. And it was just having somebody that's done it before you was a huge part of the early days of those relationships. And then as those relationships developed, it's so much about just being seen for exactly like who you are by somebody who's older, by somebody who didn't grow up with you, right? In small town, rural New Hampshire, you grow up with the same kids from, first grade all the way to 12th grade. And aside from their role as a mentor, they don't owe anything to you, but they want to see you as you are and want to spend time with you. And that positive engagement and them wanting to be with you regardless of the difference in ages, that I remember that feeling very special, especially when they could drive and drive you to places and you could be involved in things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get yourself to. And just feeling a sense of welcome and belonging. And those are some of the same themes, again, that I see in my career now. It's like, how can we create authentic sense of welcome, authentic sense of belonging so that people can show up exactly how they are? I think that's what those relationships gave to me. Not to mention, a lot of them were based on, like I said, this experience of theater and the theater arts, which is all about self-expression and trying on new identities, which is something that I think every teenager should have an opportunity to do. And having older peers who have done that and can guide you is huge.
Yeah, I think the other piece that came out of that evolution for you is the value that you knew your voice had because you saw the value in what these mentors had for you. And so not only were these role models helping you guide you in the direction of what you needed as a 14-year-old, but when you stepped into their shoes, you already knew how important that relationship was and could pass that relationship on to another group of individuals.
And that was it. And you hold that relationship so dearly. Like, I've cherished and valued those friendships so much. And when those folks graduated, like, I felt the pain and the sadness of like their absence. I wanted to selfishly, maybe not selfishly, but like self-aware, I wanted to give that to someone else. And I wanted to have that again for myself. So there's definitely a selfish component to it. But I agree with you. It was a little bit of training also, right? So it wasn't just I had these innate abilities because I had this relationship. I had the interest and the passion because I had experienced it myself. And that brings you to being able to participate wholly in the trainings that you get as a peer leader, right? And to say, okay, this is actually how they did it. And these are some of the skills that I can use. And I want to make them feel like they can just be whoever they are. How do I do that? How do I get into that? So it was definitely about my past experience and then the training.
Well, when I do the work, I struggle with teens feeling confident. And you bring up a lot of the pieces that help individuals develop confidence through that experience. When you're helping others, it's building your own confidence. When you are collaborating with your peers, you're building your confidence. When you're having to share your thoughts and your information with someone else, you're building your confidence. So it was almost like an opportunity for some kids to learn how to develop confidence.
Yeah, to reverse the roles a little bit. That feeling of being like, wow, an older person wants to spend time with me and be in my life, and that feels really special. Reverse the roles, and it's, wow, this younger person's actually listening to what I have to say. And that feels really good. And that makes me feel like I have worth in this conversation and in this situation in their lives. And that definitely builds confidence as well, for sure.
From our experience, I know that the program that you were a part of was not every kid didn't have these opportunities. Do you know what would encourage a kid to step into a role? I know from your experience that you saw the value from your own support, but what were some of your peers' reasonings for doing this program? Do you know?
Yeah, I think that the initial attraction is that they themselves get to be with their own peers, right? In a space that's outside of like academics and typical extracurriculars. I think there was a lot of excitement around the trainings and trips that we got to take together. I think that was a huge motivator at the very beginning. And then the reason why people stay obviously went beyond that. I've definitely been guilty of being not a people pleaser per se, but like my interests really lie in helping others. And so I know that that's what it was for me. I know that my peers derive joy in that same way, but I can imagine that why they stayed is because they just started to see that those small moments and those small impacts that they started to make. But I think they really were drawn to it because it was another way to learn and engage that was outside of the typical classroom. And that had the promise of like, you're really going to learn about yourself and you're really going to learn about each other through this process.
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of the reasons that I was drawn to working with those students was the learning that I got from my students. And I think that was really where my shift of being the all-knowing teacher to the I can learn just as much from you as you can share that you're gaining from me, and that actually has carried into the programming that I do is I don't want to be the one in charge. I don't want to be the one that tells you what to do. And I love when I can pass that baton onto others. And it's really fascinating that program that we were both part of sort of inspired that space.
Yeah, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't also say that you and your energy and the kind of the theory that you bring behind the work wasn't also a huge draw. And how many times in high school, the traditional high school setting, do you actually get an opportunity to practice leadership skills, right? So, okay, you have the captain of the basketball team, right? So that's a one-shot opportunity. It's a very rare opportunity. There's other opportunities that are few and far between, and they're usually temporary, right? It's not about building long-term relationships as with yourself as a leader. It's about this one-off thing that you have a chance to do. And I think there's a draw to a very low risk experience where you can try out some leadership skills and see if this is what it's, good for. And but you know what? You're not going to be alone. You're going to be with your friends who are trying out the same thing and who are also trying to figure themselves out as a leader. That was a huge draw. And I think it still is. And I see it in the kids that I work with now. It's sometimes they question me and they're like, you want me to be a leader? Yeah, especially you. So
Yeah, and through that journey, through that experience, and now working with the kids in your organization, it's so rewarding to not only engage with this population of kids, but to give them the leadership space where, because of the language barrier, they're struggling academically. Because of the language barrier, they're struggling socially. Because of the language barrier, and cultural socioeconomic barrier, they're not being afforded a lot of these opportunities to step into leadership. So to have the Center for New Americans that sort of eliminates all of those external challenges, and we can allow these kids to step into leadership, it's incredible.
yeah, I agree with you. And it is right. It's about creating that environment and putting those things in place, just like you did for us in high school, right? You create this calm, welcoming, energetic, trusting environment. And like that's the key. That's what started opening us up. And I see it with our kids too. And yes, it's a holistic approach where we wrap around everything that we can to try to break down those barriers and boundaries for them. And sometimes at the end of the day, it hasn't been about their English skill or about the academic performance or even their cultural proficiency. They're just exhausted. They're just exhausted from having to live in a new world. And so after school, they get to us and you could kind of just see their shoulders come down a little bit and just breathe and know that however they show up in that space, it doesn't matter. You're still considered a leader, right? And leaders have tough days and they're tired and they forgot their English homework just like you did. And it's just, but you still get to show up as a leader. So I think that's a huge part for them, is that we can meet them where they're at, not just on all these other journeys they're on, but on their leadership journey too. And environment's a big part of that. And I learned a lot of that from you. I'm still learning a lot of that from you. Yeah. But I mean, we're talking about the most resilient kids in the world, truly. I believe that. And so being able to meet that level of energy that they're bringing to their own journey with opportunities like this, I feel like it's just necessary. We have to give them the opportunities they've already worked so hard for.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, I'm thinking about the resistance to wanting to believe that we see something in those kids, or the resistance to your peers as a teenager to believing that they could do the peer leadership role. Do you have a sense of what is sort of the hang up for some of the kids when you say, I want you to do this, and they're like, you want me to do this? Do you know what sort of gets in their way?
I'm just going to be honest here. I often wonder, and I say this cautiously as a parent myself, but I often wonder how often positive adult relationships have shown up in their life, and how often adults, whether they be teachers or caregivers, have said to this child standing in front of me, I trust you. I believe in you. You can own this. Because I think some of that initial reaction is that I've never experienced this before. I've never experienced an adult telling me that I can do something like this. And as much as that breaks my heart, sometimes it's a nice opportunity to catch, because that's something I feel like I can work with, right? That's okay. We can start to inject more positive conversations like this into our relationship. And maybe that's going to be what gets you to the next step of believing that you can do this. That type of reaction isn't always super hindering or surprising for me with the kids that I work with.
Yeah, I think if we don't have people in our lives telling us that we can do hard things, then we don't know that we can do hard things. And I think as a young person, that's where you have to be given the belief that you can do a hard thing.
That's it, right? And not for nothing, a lot of our kids, if they haven't been told those things directly throughout their lives, if they haven't had that experience with a positive adult, then I know that they're not really seeing it in mainstream media. I know that our kids aren't well represented on the leadership stage, so to speak, in school or out of school. And so not being able to see themselves in those other ways and say, you know, that is possible for me. They look just like me. They've had the same experience as me. Without a lot of that representation, yeah, I'm not surprised that they question themselves. I'm heartbroken by it, but not surprised.
But now that we're embedding it into your organization and your programming, they actually are seeing themselves reflected, which I just made that connection as you were talking, is now they see each other doing these things that they've never seen somebody that looks like them do. And the seed has been planted and we have seen it grow. It's really exciting.
Yeah, this has been the single most exciting transformation that I've ever seen over time with our kids. And something that's just happened the last couple of weeks is we have started recruiting, so to speak, for our next cohort of middle school mentors. Before we put the call out, we were like flooded with requests. And we let them know we're going to have our intro meeting. We'll talk about it and we'll start kind of letting you know what we expect from you as the commitment. And we let them know the date that we were going to start. They started showing up a week before that, calling and coming to the physical building saying, I'm here for middle school mentorship, without a promise of what they would get in return. And some of these things that we had to do very early on to kind of convince the first cohort, like, no, you really should do this. No, some of these kids had a middle school mentor and they were ready to become mentors. without a promise of any type of compensation or prize or anything like that. They just wanted to. So even before we've had this training meeting, we haven't even had it yet. The kids have been in this space working casually as mentors under the guise of just get to know the younger kids. You're going to just introduce yourself and just be in their space. And that's it. I can't believe that we're going to have to start like choosing who is going to be a mentor. That's just it. They saw it, they experienced it, they know it's for them. So they're self-electing into it. It's awesome.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to a question that I struggled with as the peer leadership advisor is how do we choose and why do we choose and how can we make this something that's available to everyone? And as you pose that question, I'm like, okay, now we need a solution to this because there is no way that either you or I want to shut that possibility down for any individual.
No, and I almost imagine that it's doing what we thought it would do, which is we've just created a culture of mentorship, right? So everybody has the opportunity and, dare I say, the expectation that they will act and engage as a mentor when they have the opportunity. So the opportunities are abound when it's just part of our culture, is kind of how I see it. And then I think that there are ways that we can start to build different commitment levels, so to speak. I mean, some of our kids are really like, I want to do the trainings. I want to do everything. I want to go on the special field trips and I can commit to that. And I want them to be able to commit to that because I know what kind of experience they can get out of it. But if there's different tiers, the kids that play seasonal sports, things like that, which still have those opportunities, but the commitment needs to be different for them just because I want to set them up for success. Whatever they decide to commit to, I want them to feel what it feels like to complete that and to really, if you're going to commit to a younger kid that you're going to be here every week, I really want to see you follow through on that. But if it's once a month, let's do that. So maybe there's just different tiers of engagement, but when they're all operating within a culture of mentorship and peer leadership, like that's bam, like they all have the opportunities. But there's only so much that we can do to force that culture upon them. The fact that they're doing it and building them themselves means I just have to start putting the opportunities there that now. So we have gotten there and it feels amazing.
Yeah, it's really exciting actually to think about the fact that now we just have to put the opportunities out there for them because the desire is there. Where, as you sort of alluded to at the very beginning, is you want me to do that? Okay, maybe I'll do this. I've seen what Lorraine is doing. It looks fun. And now I can't wait. I want to be there. And that's, oh my God, so cool.
It is so cool. And I want to be there and I know how to be here. And that's like that second step. It's the apprehension of, do I want to do this? And then the second level of apprehension is, do I know how to do this? I want to show up, but I don't know if I know how. And these kids know how because they've been in leadership before. And so when they have got two younger kids in front of them that are having a conflict, they know how to do some light conflict resolution because they had that in their leadership class. So it's kind of, once we've gotten there and seeing them grow beyond I want to be here, I know how to be here, like I'm confidently here. That like feeling of arrival is starting to happen and that feels good.
Well, then let me ask you this question that I know is one of the challenges that a lot of organizations face when they put kids in these kind of positions of being a role model. What if and what happens when our mentors and peer leaders make a mistake? How are we going to navigate that? Because in the past, I've seen how traumatizing taking that leadership title or taking that role away from a kid can really be for them.
Yeah, I can't imagine ever taking away that title, right? Because I feel like once you've become a leader, first of all, you've always been a leader, right? That's the message.
Right.
But once you've realized that, I don't think that ever gets to go away. And now, just like I was talking about the commitment levels, maybe it's responsibilities and ownership that you've earned as part of who you are as a leader, just like in the real world. Maybe some of those things go away, but you never stop being a leader. And I think that part of being a leader, like I've learned from you, is that you have to own your mistake, right? That's part of leadership. So how can we coach them to go to their younger peers and say, I've made a mistake and this is what I need to do moving forward? And I will say, not to get too extreme about it, but like we have had older kids who have kind of graduated out of our program, who are out of high school, who have made some pretty serious life mistakes in their young 20s. And we have had a couple kids pass because of their involvement in those mistakes, right? With gang violence and otherwise. And so we've had kids who were friends with our children that have gotten themselves into pretty big mistakes come back and want to be alumni mentors because they want to make sure that kids younger than them don't go down those same paths, don't make those same mistakes. And although it wasn't their mistake to own, they feel like they have that responsibility to come back and explain and to get kids on the right path. And I just feel like any opportunity that you can give to say, okay, these kids are going to make mistakes. Can you teach them how to talk about them? Can you teach them how to make amends to their peers and to the environment and culture they're part of? I think that's going to be a big part of it. We've already seen a little bit of that, but it's not something that we've intentionally built in. And this is kind of getting me thinking about how we could do that, how we can be ready for those things because they're kids and it's going to happen.
Well, and I think you and I have worked on some of the repair and the resolution at the adult level, right? And so it's all about that the modeling. Is a mistake okay at the adult level? Is the repair visible at the adult level? And if it is, and we're doing those things, then the kids will know. And like you said, giving them the opportunity to accept responsibility, there is no bigger gift to that individual for the rest of their life because they're demonstrating to others that they know they had an impact on other people, and to grow is actually extraordinary.
I think so too. And I'm glad that you brought up the work that you've done with us at kind of the staff level, at the adult level. Isn't that the truth, right? If we are not trying to address these things in our own lives, professional or otherwise, and trying to figure out our own leadership identities and how we repair, it's hard to walk the walk sometimes, but it's necessary. I'd like to sit in a couple leadership classes myself with some of the kids, that's for sure. But it's a wonderful, beautiful thing about kids, especially at that like elementary school age. They are so ready to forgive. They are so ready to accept. I just think we have an environment prime for forgiveness and for acceptance. And so making sure that you've got that in place too, I think could be really important.
I think the challenge that I brought to you is a challenge that can be reactionary. So if you're not thinking about how am I going to navigate one of these mentors or peer leaders making a mistake, how am I going to navigate that? Then you default to what you've seen take place in other places and what we see taking place in society when somebody makes a mistake, that even politically we shun them, we shut them down, we don't even let their mistakes be part of the conversation.
Right? We cancel them, we fire them, all of the above. No, I agree with you. It's unfortunate that's the world that they're going out into. But God, at least they're going to be prepared to have those conversations in their personal lives and start creating those environments around them because they know what's possible and they know what they're capable of and what's right.
Yeah. And I mean, they come at a disadvantage because they weren't born into the American culture. And some of them come when they're very young and some come mid-adolescence. And the transition for them is different for everyone. So the ability to be a mentor at any level is incredible. And what a marketable skill for these kids.
Oh my gosh, of course. And again, maybe unique to our environment, but because our kids come from such different cultural backgrounds, because we work so hard on cultural cohesion, that we make space for their cultures to come through in their behaviors and in their language. And we have learned so much about interpersonal relationships from a lot of our kids that come from different cultures, especially when we're talking about giving and receiving feedback, making apologies, making amends. They come with very different experiences that have often been much more helpful than the way that we approach things, right? They so much more value the relationship and the conversation than the amount of time that it takes. And let's just get to the resolution and like long form sessions of understanding. So there's definitely a lot to be learned from kids from different cultures too, and what it brings to leadership. And I think that if there are ways for us to build that in more intentionally and to hear from them and even maybe their families, I think that could be a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, I actually can envision the kids or the older teenagers running a session for the parents and the families of new families, right? And they have the language to communicate. And now they have the skills that they've learned through the Center of New Americans. Like, that is true leadership.
That would be very cool, right? And to be able to take their leadership skills into a setting where they need to balance and respect multiple cultures and hold space for multiple cultures. I mean, we're talking like some of our leading people in our country can't do these things. So yeah. Yeah, but if we give them the space to show up authentically as themselves, then those things come a lot easier. And I know we were actually just talking about today how difficult it is for some of our parents to be able to show up for their kids in the way they want to, right? To come to the basketball game or to come to the soccer game because of working second and third shift jobs. But when you can create an opportunity for them to see their kids in those positions, I mean, just the feedback we get from parents is massive. One of our kids in particular is actually starting his first job. He is 14 and he has been with us for years and was probably one of the shyest kids that we've ever had. And his mom reached out earlier this week and was like, just want to let you know he's starting his first job, so he might not be around as much, but we're really proud of him. We really think he's going to do a great job. And I can't help but think this is one of our leadership kids, right? Like, this is one of our kids who is ready to go out into the working world. He's going to be at the market basket checkout. I'm so excited for him because he is confident enough to go out and do this as a 14-year-old and not just out of necessity. So yeah, anytime we can get family involvement in it, the feedback is so, so, so positive and they get to reinforce it at home and it's huge.
Yeah. It's been really fun to be on this journey with you from when you were a teenager to where I am now. It is almost like the roles have reversed, and I look to you for guidance and direction. And now it's almost mutual, right? So sometimes I'm in a guidance role, sometimes you're in a guidance role. And it's really, I think in these conversations, I learn so much about the other person, but I also learn about myself. And in recognizing that the growth that we've been able to create in the Center of New Americans has evolved ourselves, right? Like, I've seen you grow immensely in your leadership role in this position. And we're modeling continuous learning. We're modeling listening and learning from each other. We're modeling all of those things to your staff. And we're modeling to the kids. And the kids are modeling to the staff. And the kids are modeling to us. That space that I often think people think of leadership as a triangle, where there's only one person at the top. It's so limiting that way.
It is. Well, first of all, I'm like the president of the Lorraine fan club. So I just want to make sure my biases are very clear here. But I think that it speaks to the way that you have designed and developed this program. This isn't a you signed up for Leadership 101. I'm going to take 15 kids and it will run between 4 and 5 p.m. and then I'm out. You're constantly asking those questions about how is this playing into the larger picture? How do you understand leadership? How are you going to support these kids out of leadership class? And what's going on with your team? How is this being impacted with the team, the adults that are interacting with these kids? Like, these larger questions and the ability to create an environment of leadership and an environment of mentorship. Like, yes, we have grown immensely. And I'm not sure how much more time we have, but I could talk about this all day because we just decided that we would like as a team to create some sort of really easy to understand acronym or something that we can point to when the kids are asking about behavior or about our culture. And we can say, you know what, these are our pillars, these are our values. And I know we've done values work with you. And we're like, can we come up with a handy acronym, maybe even a public school would have? And what we found is that as we started breaking down the values that we have in our space and on our team, it is about leadership, it's about mentorship, it's about respect. And so we've got this new acronym. It's TREE, which just happened to happen, but it's teamwork, respect, empowerment, and equity. And that's what we're going to point to in our space. But I just was shocked at how many of the sticky notes we were putting up on the board as we were working. That's no matter what the values that we want to take forward for our kids are that they are leaders and that they are positive mentors. So it's showing up in work that is unexpected, but not surprising because this is our culture now. And culture creating is hard work, and somehow you've managed to do it through this after school youth program, which I think is pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. And the visual of a tree is that it's always growing, right? And so your foundation has been set and you're just going to keep growing from that foundation. So I'm excited that tree is the acronym and the words are fantastic. So I love that. And I love the evolution of the center. I love the evolution of your staff. I love the evolution of your own growth. And it's all encompassing, right? We're not just focusing in one area. And like you said, I just keep asking those questions. How is this going to support the work that you're doing in general? And it's been really fun.
Yeah, it's been fun for us. It's starting to seep into our partnerships too. Like I said, I could talk about this all day in the ways that it's impacted us, but it just changed our minds. It's changed our mindsets. And maybe we were there, right? Maybe we were at the triangle, right? That was how we were operating, but it's not that way anymore. And seeing all the benefits from it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, for giving me the opportunity to take something that I knew had the power to change the lives of so many and the ripple effect that it's having. You sort of alluded to how it's impacting and it's just continuing to spread. And I mean, that's the whole goal of my leadership programs is that
Yeah.
I am one person. I can only do so much. So how do I take what I know and share it with the next person, right? Teach a man to fish, he can eat forever.
No, totally. And to kind of circle back to the beginning of our conversation, when you first came to me and you had these ideas for leadership and the space was really new with us after school, it was like, I know that I trusted you and trusted your work, not because of my experience as a peer mentor necessarily and peer leadership. Yes, those were important factors, but because of the way that you as an adult made me feel as a kid, that positive adult interaction and that belief and that just you built that trust with me as an individual. So then, like that ripple effect that you're talking about, it was easy for me to say, yes, this is somebody whose work I want to be in our space and engaging with our kids. So in those moments when it feels like for our kids, what kind of impact can I make? Why me? It's like you just imagine the impact of one positive older person, adult, whatever you want to call them, relationship can have. So yeah, I definitely think that we are a testament to that.
100%. Well, I am so grateful for this conversation. Is there any advice that you would go back and give Courtney or go back and give a teenager today that we haven't already covered?
Oh my goodness. I think that my advice would be to pour your effort and your energy into creating a circle of people, chosen family, friends, whatever, who see you and accept you as exactly who you are. And all of your energy should be into putting out your weird beacon and seeing who is attracted to it and keep those people close in your world. And that would be my advice.
I love it. I love that advice so much. And because that's what you started this conversation with, is that I knew myself at a very young age and I knew my people. And here we are back around. And you're like, yes, that was the best thing for me as a teenager. So I love that. Courtney, where can people find you or find information about the Center for New Americans?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So on socials, we are at SNHU Center for New Americans. Our website isn't super robust, but that's where you can find the most up-to-date information on us. And then on Facebook at SNHU Center for New Americans. I'm just extending a welcome to anybody who would like to drop by and visit us. If you don't mind, I can just rattle off my email address.
Sure.
It's c.perron, the number 1 at snhu.edu. And I'd be happy to meet with anybody who's interested in our work.
That's awesome. It's such profound, cool work that, like, where you started as a teenager to where you are now, it's really cool. So if anybody wants to know more about how Courtney has created this opportunity for kids that would normally not have these kind of opportunities, it's pretty awesome. So reach out. Are you ready to help the young people in your life unlock their inner strength and step confidently into leadership? The new workbook from Peers Not Fears, Your Voice Matters, Uncovering Your Unique Leadership. It's designed to help teens see the leader in themselves, step by step. It's not just a workbook. It's the first step towards a ripple effect that could change lives. Let's turn today's teens into tomorrow's titans. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit from this conversation. Together, we can support our teens in building healthy, positive relationships and become leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Lorraine Connell, and this is Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans.